Welcome to my assembly video for the GP-31 Ultimatum from Helldivers 2. To get started, we're going to use the missile bomb in missile parts and use a 1/2 inch by 7.5 inch wooden dowel along the missile part. This will prevent it from breaking and cracking when you launch this in the future. To hold the parts together, we're going to use an M3 by 20mm screw. This will allow us to be able to swap out the missile bomb in case it breaks or falls apart in the future. Starting with the body, we're going to grab this component and the missile sling. I have modeled 4 different holes into the body to allow us spring adjustments in case you want to use different spring lengths or types. But we're going to get started with what I decided to go with, which are 2-inch in length extension springs. And I'll be using M4 by 10mm button head screws to hold these down. Now when you go to screw these in, especially in the body part, make sure they are not screwed in too deep into the body, otherwise it'll collide with the missile when you go to lock the missile in. Next up, we're going to grab the foregrip and handguard pieces, and we're going to bolt them together using an M4 by 14mm screw. Doesn't matter if it's socket head or button head. Go ahead and grab our grip piece and set those parts aside. Now, we're going to start assembling the trigger assembly part. Starting with the large part of the trigger component, we're going to insert the missile hook here and make sure that it is facing that direction. The little stem part will have that retains the spring. Put a compression spring on the underside of this hook. And there might be some ways to make this easier or harder, but I decided to go ahead and slot that part in, feed in the compression screw. Then using an M3 by 20mm countersunk screw, I put that down in there to help align the compression spring to the hook. It's got nothing to thread into, it's just there as a supporting rod. Once you have everything assembled, make sure that everything is moving freely and gliding along. Also on these ramp parts here, I recommend sanding and applying grease. This will help in the future to make things work a lot easier and smoother. Add a compression spring that can go over the stem part and moves freely. Now to add the trigger part. Make sure that these faces here are smooth and glide freely against the ramp component of your trigger pack. This will make sure everything will function and you won't encounter problems in the future once you have everything assembled. Now we'll go ahead and insert this into the grip component. And it should go all the way back. There is a screw back here, and you can use an M3 by 10mm screw to lock the trigger pack into the grip. And this is necessary, otherwise you will have problems in the future if you skip this step. Now we can slot in the handguard assembly into our grip and trigger assembly and use 2 more M3 by 10 millimeter screws into those holes here. Now make sure when you screw in these screws that they're flush and flat with the surface, otherwise it won't go together. Now that we have everything assembled, go ahead and double check that everything is moving, and it should be very smooth and very much gliding across. Now we'll use an M4 by 8 millimeter countersunk screw to bolt the handguard into the grip. And this should complete the lower part of your Ultimatum assembly. Now we'll grab the body assembly that we were working on earlier. We can slot that in, and it should go all the way down and through a little square that we have on the front here. We'll grab the front cap, slot that on, and we'll use an M4 by 8 millimeter button head screw to bolt together the parts. Our next step after this is we're going to grab the side panel pieces here. Now they're distinct and they can only go in one way, one direction. So on this one there is a lip part on one end that will go towards the front of the gun. And we'll just go ahead and slide this in, and we'll know everything's put together if it doesn't hit any of the screws or springs on the way down. Putting that aside, we'll move on to our next part, the stock cap assembly. Make sure the hole for the button is clear. We'll go ahead and grab our stock adjustment button here and put the more open end of the circle on the top that holds the spring facing the rear, and we'll put a compression spring on top, followed by the cap. And then we will use an M4 by 16 millimeter button head screw to hold the cap on top. This part of the video is just to give a more clear angle of what it is that I'm doing. You can see that the button's in, the compression spring's put on top, then the cover goes on top of that as well. And then you can also test to make sure that everything is moving freely before using the same M4 screw to keep the cover attached to the cap here. And then test to make sure everything is moving freely. I add these square pins onto here and then slide it in to the back of the Ultimatum. Everything should line up perfectly. Now using this dovetail part here, there is a little square hole here. You can face it either direction you want. It's just for in the future if you want to take it apart, you can use a flathead screwdriver to pop the part out. Now use the top cover, and there's a dovetail slot that I added onto the underside here, and it should slot in from the front. And it should slot all the way into the back. Then we'll use 2 M4 by 10 millimeter countersunk screws to hold the top plate down to the body assembly. Next, we'll go ahead and grab the Picatinny rail part, making sure that the more blocky side is towards the rear. You can always double check the hole alignments to make sure everything is going together as intended, as it would only go on one direction. Then using 2 M4 by 14 millimeter countersunk screws to mount the Picatinny rail to the rest of the assembly. There's also a spot for an M4 button head screw to mount to the underside where the stock cap went onto. Next is mounting the holographic sight to the top of the gun. This uses 2 M3 by 35 millimeter socket head screws. Now, where I have it here is about where it is in game, but honestly, you can mount this wherever you like to. You may have noticed that the hollow sight's a little loose on the rail. This is intentional, as it'll tighten up once it's been painted. To mount our stock, just need to push in the stock adjustment button, push it all the way in, and then you should be able to put in the stock. Now there's locking lugs on the stock, so when you go to push in the button, it will lock in place. Finally, once you have the missile in and everything else, give everything a really good rattle and shake. You want to make sure that nothing sets off by accident, because if something isn't assembled really well, the missile can fire on its own. And also finally, make sure that the missile works when you squeeze the trigger. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you all have a good rest of your day and enjoy your build. Bye!